Which animation exercises can you do right now, especially if you do not know anything about animating? Because let's be real, Googling animation exercises just makes things worse. And that's for two reasons. One, there's so many options out there. It's overwhelming. And two, most exercises don't actually teach you what skills they're teaching you. So you can spend years animating without really improving. And that's how a lot of would-be great animators just never start. That's why I've narrowed it down to just 3 exercises that even pros like me go back to when we need a reset. More importantly, I'll be breaking down which skills these exercises actually teach you. So you're not just copying movements, you're learning how animation actually works. And bonus, the last one takes under 5 minutes to make and it feels more like a game than an exercise. I'm going to show you how to do all of these exercises on Procreate, but if you don't have Procreate, you don't have a tablet, you can use sticky notes, and if you do have a tablet but you have a different drawing app that you use for animation, that's perfectly fine. And you can do this in any drawing app as long as it allows you to do some animation. With that said, let's jump into the first one. This first one is even more basic than the bouncing ball. Let me show you. What you do in this exercise is you just animate a ball going up and down, up and down. That's it. You're not trying to play with principles like squash and stretch, because the 3 that matter in this one is getting your basics down pat. Instead of focusing on the advanced principle technique of squash and stretch, the 3 principles of animation that this one teaches is timing and spacing. And you can think of timing and spacing as how far apart your drawings are drawn, and that's going to create how fast or how slow something looks like it's moving. Number 2 is you get to practice pose to pose animation, because you will start off, and let me just show you. You're going to start off with your pose A ball, and then you're going to go to pose B. Yeah, in my case, I just duplicated here and moved down, and that becomes pose B. And now you know how to get from point A to point B, because you have your 2 extremes, which is pretty much, how do I put this? Your 2 extremes mean that you have your starting point and your end point. And now you have to figure out how to fill in what frames, what drawings are going to go between point A and point B. That's how you do pose to pose. And the final skill this animation exercise teaches is ease in, ease out, or if you prefer to think of it, slow in, slow out. That was very helpful reframe when I was starting out animating, because the entire point of ease in, ease out is how fast or how slow the action is happening coming into that pose or out of that pose. So if we were to take this bouncing ball, for instance, I'm not focusing too much. I'm just trying to change my spacing, because I'm having the ball ease out, which means there's going to be a lot of drawings up front, and then they're going to get spaced further out, showing a faster movement. I can actually show that to you now because it is done. If you're especially new, I highly recommend you just use transform tools or move things. You don't actually have to worry about trying to draw everything perfectly, because I know that's something that beginners really struggle with, trying to get every single pose exactly like the previous one. And one of the benefits of animation really is that it's supposed to be a little messy because it's hand-drawn and you can't make everything perfect. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm really just trying to get this as quick as possible. I never put the frames from B to C, which will complete the animation loop. In fact, I'm going to actually just copy A. So let me just quickly add from pose B to pose C. That's doing that pose to pose again. And we're going to add timing and ease in, ease out. Let's play this. And there you go. That's the first animation exercise. Super easy, super simple. And just remember, you're practicing timing, how far apart your drawings are to create how fast or slow your drawing is going. Ease in, ease out. You're trying to control how fast the ball is going to fall and how fast it's going to come out of it. The third one that you're going to want to practice is going to be that pose to pose. You're going to draw pose A, pose B, and pose C, and then you're going to just fill it in. And now you're ready for number 2, which is building on this, and it's getting a little bit more complicated, but you get to add a little bit more of a story to it. As you can see, the ball crouches and then springs. So you're telling an entire story in that one movement. And you get to create a character without having to worry about all the little nuances if you had a full character to make. You are back in drama class if you ever took it. In fact, I did not, but I've heard this saying so many times, and I've also read so many books when I was looking at how to write characters, that they are always talking about you want to give your character motivation. The ball crouching and then springing forward, you are pretty much animating your character's motivation. And the 3 skills that you use in this that are the most important when you are building that character motivation in your ball are anticipation, squash and stretch, and arcs. So to go over what each of those means, because they're very different from the skills that I was telling you about in the first animation exercise we did. Anticipation, you can think of it as the movement that your character, your ball, is going to make to pretty much shout at your audience, say, hey, look at me, I'm about to do something. And if you need a more visual example, the one that I've heard the most across the internet is think of it like somebody throwing a punch, especially if you've watched Alan Becker's 12 Principles of Animation. He says it, which just enforces to me that if you think about it, because we'll go with that visual, when you wind up for a punch, you're going to pull your arm back and then you're going to punch forward. You are telling the audience, hey, on this pose, you're telling the audience something is about to happen here. You should really pay attention. And then they get to feel the anticipation. They get to feel the result. So then we're on to the second one that I mentioned, which is squash and stretch. You can think of squash and stretch as your object is either solid or it's squishy. And you will get the most squash and stretch when your object is squishy. If your ball was a bowling ball, then when it falls down, it's probably going to break the floor. But if it's a tiny, squishy, bouncy ball, it's going to hit the floor, squash down a little bit, and stretch out the other way, because whenever you have squash and stretch, it squashes and then it stretches the other way because it keeps its volume. And then the ball, that springy little ball, is going to bounce right back up and continue on. So squash and stretch also gives your weight to your characters and makes it feel whether or not they are solid or if they have some mass that gets to squish. And the third one I mentioned is arcs. Arcs are pretty much the path that the ball follows, because most objects, even here, just watch my hand, it's moving in an arc. It's not moving in a straight line. So in that same way, whenever you're animating something, you're going to want to think in arcs and moving objects along them. So if you were to do this animation yourself right now, you would start off with the ball. You would draw your arc, put it to the background, make sure that it's not part of your actual animation, but you'd use it as a guiding line. Then you would add some squash and stretch to make the ball jump. And also you're squashing the ball down to add the anticipation. And then you would have it leap into the air. You might have noticed in there that besides for anticipation, arcs, and squash and stretch, there were a few more principles that I threw in there to really make this ball work, but those are the 3 that you're going to want to start off with. And if you ever have any questions about how I did something or what even happened and you're not sure, you can always leave a comment down below. I try to respond to all comments and answer your questions, because if you're just starting this animation journey, it's so exciting and I really want you to succeed, and I want this to just be as easy as possible for you. And now you're ready to find out what number 3 is, the one that I told you it takes under 5 minutes to make, that it feels more like a game than an exercise, and you have Alex Grigg to thank for it. I actually don't know if he's the one who originally invented it or if it was just started on the internet, because I also saw a Instagram reel about it, but it's only thanks to him that I actually found out about it, and it is one of the most fun ones that I can recommend if you are just starting out. It is known as the magic dot or the fly. And this time I'm actually going to do the reverse of what I've been doing with the previous 2, in that I'm going to show you how to make it first, and then I'm going to tell you which principles you're actually practicing. You're going to start by just making a dot. Let me turn on my animation assist so you can actually see and we can animate, and then you're just going to start making dots. And dot, you can get to choose how far apart you make them, how closely together. You can even add what's called a smear, which I was so happy that he showed, which just is an old cartoony way of showing that something is moving really fast before they invented things like motion blur. And this exercise actually ends when you decide you've had enough and you're done. Right now I'm going to say I've had enough. It's been probably about a minute, but let's see what it looks like. One of the best parts about this exercise, I know I keep teasing you what skills this even flying dot teaches you when all you're doing is just tapping the pen, and what skills could it possibly teach you about animation. But I really do need to tell you the best part about this exercise, there is no wrong way to do it. All right, and now that you've waited, I'm going to just tell you the 3 skills that you actually learn. You are learning about timing, which is how far apart you are drawing your dot. You're learning about arcs. If you've noticed, I only ever drew the dot in an arc so that it's winding its way, moving in an arc. Definitely in the schmear it went straight, but everywhere else it was an arc, and you get to practice that without, I've got to try to figure that out and how to make it look right. And then the last skill that this teaches is ease in, ease out, or slow in, slow out, which is where you're choosing how fast your magic dot is moving when it's coming out of those arcs or into those arcs, or just moving across the screen. Now I have a question for you. Which one are you going to start with? And if you're looking to animate something a little more complicated, check out this video.